for themselves in the midst of the worst economy of our lifetime. Mr. Chairman, I recommend my colleagues vote against the amendments that further cut any of these vital programs for Americans. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote against this irresponsible continuing resolution, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. As many as are in favor, what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? What purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
To strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, the spending bill that the Republicans have introduced is a threat to our economy, a threat to our competitiveness, and a threat to America's working families. And with this amendment, a threat to America's poor. No one is in favor of wasteful spending or outdated government regulations that don't work, or special spending for the powerful and the special interest. Instead of identifying real governmental waste, like subsidies to big oil and tax cuts to billionaires, the House Republicans have decided that all the cuts will fall on the backs of working people, on students, and on the poor in this country. The universe of cuts will be limited to those parts of our population, the most vulnerable parts of our population, those who struggle every day to keep their job, to provide for the families, to hold on to their homes, or maybe to catch a break and get a job, or maybe to catch a break and have their child be put into Head Start, or to have mental health services for a member of their families. They deny workers the basic rights and protections on the job, and they prevent unemployed Americans from getting job training that will give them a leg up in this economy because they zero out these programs. They simply put, the Republican spending bill eliminates hundreds of thousands of jobs and hundreds of thousands of job opportunities for Americans who are seeking to get back into the economy. This bill is reckless and irresponsible. The programs that are targeted in this bill are a lifeline to the future of our economy. These cuts mean over 200,000 young children will lose their spots in Head Start classrooms. For the first time, as we celebrate the 100th birthday of President Reagan, we destroy Ron and Nancy's favorite program. Those children will not be allowed into the Head Start classroom, and we know exactly what that means. They will start school behind, they will continue behind, and if they graduate, they'll graduate behind. That's what we cast them into. That's why it's called Head Start. These children need a Head Start. These 250,000 children will not get a Head Start. They will go to the back of the line. It means that parents will have to choose between going to work and putting their children in low-quality child care without an option for those Head Start classes. It means that 2,400 disadvantaged schools that rely on Title I funding will provide quality education, will lose the funding for teachers and tutors and after-school programs. And again, the most vulnerable children, the children who start without that Head Start, the children who are the poorest in our nation, they will receive the least resources available so that they can participate in an economy if they can get a good quality education and have the opportunity to achieve it. These cuts mean that reduced supports for students with disabilities will leave some 7,000 special education teachers and staffs unemployed, and the services those students that desperately need it and that can prosper when they're given those services in our education programs and thrive in regular education programs will be denied that opportunity. And of course, as already has been mentioned, it means that the $845 that would have been available for the poor students, middle-income students who are starting college, whether it's community or four-year college or it's a proprietary school, that money won't be available for them. But mind you, the cost in the community colleges, the cost in the public institutions, the four-year institutions, the proprietary schools, they're all going up. These students' resources to pay for college are going down, and many of these students do not have the ability to replace those resources. By eliminating the Corporation for National and Community Services, we break the great bipartisan compact here that we would join together to provide people an opportunity to give back to this nation, that we would organize services to serve our community and to volunteers in our community, whether they be senior citizens or whether they be young people starting out, and that people could earn an opportunity by serving their community to earn a scholarship, and grandparents could earn a scholarship to give to their children if they gave back to their community and volunteered in their community. Those programs are gone. They're eliminated. They're zeroed out in this legislation. By eliminating critical job training opportunities and offered through Workforce Investment Act, some 200,000 unemployed Americans who need these skills to compete in the workplace will be denied their services, as will the returning vets from the VETS program who use the one-stop services, 3,000 of them gone in April, closed down because of the budget cuts here. Where will those veterans go? Where will those veterans go? They're seeking opportunities. Are we going to take these veterans who were harmed, who have suffered in combat, who are recovering from their injuries and trying to navigate the employment sector in our economy? They can go to a one-stop shop. They can get special treatment as a veteran in that place. They can see the array of opportunities that they might have that bring to them. But no, now they can cruise the community. They can go from place to place, trying to find and knit together the services that are available today in those one-stop centers. So this legislation is devastating, devastating to millions of Americans. Millions of Americans with a slight bit of help will be able to engage in our economy, be able to engage in our society, and be able to prosper for themselves and for their families. Tonight, the Republicans foreclose that future. They foreclose that future for millions of Americans who will not be able to fight back or hire lobbyists.
What purpose the gentleman from Jersey rise? Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the last 5 weeks or so since the new majority has taken over the House, as 15 million people are unemployed in this country, as people are losing their homes, losing their businesses, the majority has focused like a laser beam on everything except job creation for the American people. They have found time to dabble in a variety of political issues while ignoring the essential purpose for which I believe we were all sent here, which is to foster an environment where businesses and entrepreneurs can create jobs for this country. This week they have changed. They have gone from ignoring the jobs problem to making it worse. The legislation that's on the floor tonight does reflect a good faith and necessary goal of reducing spending in our country. I don't think there's anyone here who would disagree with the proposition that continuing to spend more than we take in eventually will cause even greater pain and harm to the U.S. economy than it's already caused, which is considerable indeed. But all spending cuts are not created equally, and all spending decisions don't have the same consequences. And the prism through which we have to look at spending cuts is whether they are sensible or reckless, whether they help to create jobs or destroy jobs. And I would submit, ladies and gentlemen of the House, that the legislation before us is worsening the very deep economic crisis in our country in 3 ways. First of all, you can't have economic growth if you don't have safe streets and a safe country. But the provisions of this bill will lead to the layoff of more than 10,000 police officers in cities and towns across our country. The provisions of this bill will lead to the dismissal or furlough of over 1,000 people whose job it is to check containers coming into this country to see if they have dirty bombs or chemical weapons in them. A country that isn't safe won't grow. Ladies and gentlemen, the other cuts in this bill talk about education. A country that can't learn won't grow. But this legislation will result in the elimination of 10,000 reading tutors and math coaches for the neediest students in this country. It'll remove 7,000 teachers who teach autistic kids, children with a learning disability, from classrooms. For the single mom who's struggling to pay her bills, raise her children, and go to school, it will raise her tuition by up to $825 this year by eliminating the college scholarship on which she relies to go to school. A country that doesn't learn doesn't grow, and these cuts will lead us with a country that makes it very difficult in which to learn. And finally, this country is fueled by research and development. inventing and creating new products, new cures, new solutions to the world's problems. Yet in this bill, in one of the most important areas, medical research, the majority has given us an unwelcome surprise. There is a spending cut in excess of $600 million in the National Institute of Health that is described, ladies and gentlemen, as further cuts to get to the 2008 levels. I don't know what that means. I don't think anyone on the majority side will tell us what that means. But I do know this. Thousands of Americans work doing medical research through the National Institute of Health. Millions of Americans depend upon the miracles which grow out of that research. And this country's economy is stronger when that research continues. That research will be cut. The average cancer research grant in this country is about $500,000. Looking at the cut that's in here, it appears that over 500 cancer research grants will go by the wayside. A country that isn't safe, a country that isn't learning and investing won't grow. This bill means America won't grow. This bill should be defeated.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. Opinion chair of the noes have it.
I would ask for a recorded vote.
Gentleman from Arizona asks for recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. The clerk will read.
Page 294, line 12. Section 1820, the level for Department of Health and Human Services Administration on Aging Services Program, $1,445,323,000. Section 1821, the level for Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Secretary, General Departmental Management, $375,938,000. Section 1822, the level for Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Secretary, Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund, $708,510,000. Section 1823, funds available for Department of Health and Human Services Office of the Secretary, Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund, and Public Law 111-32, $1,397,439,000 is rescinded. Section 1824, the level for Department of Education.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk, amendment number 276.
The clerk will first complete the reading of the section.
The level for Department of Education, education for the disadvantaged, $3,994,365,000, of which $3,944,530,000 shall become available on July 1, 2011.
Gentlelady from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is simple. It increases...
Gentlelady offered an amendment. The clerk will report the amendment that the gentlelady is about to offer.
Amendment number 276, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mrs. McMorris Rogers of Washington.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes on her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is simple. It increases funding for Part B program of IDEA, which provides educational grants to states for children with disabilities. It increases by $557 million, restoring funding for the program to 2010 levels. The amendment is fully offset by reducing funding to the Teacher Quality State Grant Program and the School Improvement Grant Program, two programs that have received substantial funding increases since 2009. 35 years ago, Congress recognized that too many special needs children were being denied an education and the opportunity to maximize their potential and contribution to our society. 35 years ago, severely disabled children who were confined to state institutions received no education. Special needs students did not attend school. They were kept out of classrooms, receiving little education. Today, more than 6 million children receive an effective education because of IDEA. Special needs children are no longer confined to institutions. The number of special needs students who graduate from high school with a diploma has increased. The number of children who go on to enroll in high school has more than tripled since IDEA's enactment. And through IDEA, we have increased our nation's expectations of our children. But more can and must be done. The McMorris-Rogers, Klein, Sessions, Harper Amendment ensures that Congress keeps its promise. Too often, IDEA is overlooked in our education debates. For example, Congress has yet to meet its commitment to cover 40% of a student's cost. Barriers to reliable research prevent effective teaching. Low expectations continue to plague our school systems. The reductions to IDEA and H.R. 1 are just another example of the challenges that IDEA experiences. This amendment reaffirms that there's no greater priority in Congress than ensuring all children have access to an appropriate education. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and reserve my time?
No, you can't.
Yield back. Yield back.
Gentlelady yields back her time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Connecticut rise?
I claim time in opposition.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to this amendment. You know, providing a quality education for all students, including those with disabilities, should be one of our highest priorities. So I agree with the goal of this amendment, but in fact we are considering a Republican resolution, this continuing resolution this evening, and it's the majority party to which the gentlewoman belongs, which cuts IDEA. It cuts special education by $558 million. So now we have an amendment that attempts to undo the damaging cuts to IDEA, but only by cutting other critical education programs. The damage done in this bill cannot be alleviated by robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's what this amendment is about. Let me just mention to you that, and a colleague spoke about special education and what it does, but $558 million is where they come from with regard to education for special needs kids. What that means is almost 7,000 special education teachers and aides and other staff who serve these youngsters would not be there. And it is critical. Teachers and staff are critical to the education of these youngsters. As a matter of fact, the federal government mandates that local school districts have to provide this education. And when it was determined that that would be the case, it said that the states would do 60%, the federal government would do 40%. What's happened now is we've been at about 17% in terms of a federal contribution. With the $558 million cut, we go down to about 15%. I would suggest that if there is such a great urgent need and a great burning desire to be able to provide education to special needs children, that we do not cut $558 million. Now, where does the money come from? As I mentioned, we're talking about other critical education programs, school improvement grants. I venture to say that everybody is concerned about those schools that are failing, that there's got to be student achievement at these schools. And that's what the current federal law requires, that there's demonstrable success in student achievement. The funds for the school improvement grants are appropriated precisely for those schools who fail the test and are seeking to implement a strategy for turning around our nation's lowest performing schools. That's where we would take money from in order to turn potentially failing schools to turn around so that they go from the lowest performing to better performing schools. The other place that my colleague takes funds from is something called the Teacher Quality Grants. Approximately $3 billion program and a major piece of No Child Left Behind. This provides funds to states and school districts to develop and support a high-quality teacher force. Aren't we all about making sure that those people who teach our children are qualified to do that? These funds are distributed by formula to all states. They are relied upon tremendously to reduce class size, to ensure that classroom teachers have the proper training and credentials to be effective instructors. There isn't a day that goes by that we aren't talking about school reform, and at the center of school reform is to develop quality teachers, and in fact, we want to try to link merit pay to quality teachers, do everything we can, but my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would like to take the money for school improvement grants, teacher quality grants. I suggest to you that what you do, if you're really truly interested in educating special needs children, that you decide that a $558 million cut is just not the right thing to do to children who have these special needs and who are mandated by the federal government to states to get the kind of training that they need to achieve their level and realize their dreams and aspirations. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I yield to the chairman.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, we have no objection to the amendment, and I intend to vote for the amendment, and I yield back to Mr. Klein.
Thanks, gentlemen, for yielding back. Mr. Chairman, budgeting is about making tough choices. Congress has a responsibility to outline a budget the country can afford that set priorities to live within those means. Too often in recent years, Congress failed in this basic duty. I'm pleased to see us beginning to move in a new direction. The choice we face today is whether we will begin to uphold our commitments or continue to kick the can down the road for another debate another time. That's why I'm proud to support this amendment. This amendment will move Congress closer to meeting its commitment to students with disabilities and help schools, all schools across the nation. It adds to our effort to set the right priorities. In 1971, a landmark decision was handed down by a federal judge that ruled the U.S. Constitution prohibits schools from denying access to education based solely on a child's disabilities. While this represented the judgment of one court, states soon followed. 4 years later, Congress passed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. That law, now known as the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, was designed to help states meet their obligation to provide a quality education to students with disabilities. It is a law that has been improved over the years, most recently in 2004. We've worked to strengthen the law's focus on academic achievement, empowered parents to take greater responsibility for the direction of their child's education, and help to improve the critical relationship between local school leaders and the parents and students they serve. Despite our efforts over the years, more work remains to strengthen the law to ensure students with disabilities receive the education they need. That's why we're here today. Over the past 35 years, while states have worked to follow the letter of the law and serve these students, the federal government has failed to deliver on its promise to fund 40% of the additional costs of educating students with disabilities. In fact, Mr. Chairman, we've never funded 20%. We haven't made it halfway. This amendment reallocates resources at the Department of Education to improve our commitment to meet this important need. It makes tough choices we were sent here to make. I urge my colleagues to support it. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Strike the last one.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I strongly oppose this amendment. The suggestion has been made by the chairman of my committee that somehow if you vote for this amendment, you're increasing the government's commitment to fully fund IDEA. No, you're not. You're simply restoring the cut that the Republican caucus already made a decision about, and that was to cut $558 million. That would be admirable if you restored the cut. But when you decide, therefore, that to restore the cut, you're going to now have to make additional cuts, and those additional cuts will come out of the most difficult, hard-pressed, failing schools in our country, many with increased populations of children with disabilities, that those will be the schools that we will target. We will target those schools in the poorest neighborhoods with the poorest record, where now for the first time we have a proposal made, carried out by the governors, carried out by local school districts to turn those schools around and to provide the kind of quality education that those children are entitled to so they can take advantage of the opportunities that America presents. But now money for those schools is going to be taken away on the theory that somehow you're doing a favor for students with disabilities. Don't do them such a favor. I don't think they would appreciate it that you're taking the money from their poorest neighbors. And then on top of that, you're going to take the funds that we're seeking to, and you've all given the speeches, you've all told people the most important thing outside of the family is the teacher. Well, this is the funding by which we prepare teachers to be special education teachers, to be Title I teachers, to teach math, to teach science, and now we're going to take that money in the name of somehow that this is a restorative amendment that will be good for IDEA. Let us understand something. When we were doing No Child Left Behind, we circulated a petition signed by Republicans and Democrats. We had over 300 people sign that and said, let's go for full funding. When we offered that amendment in the conference committee, the Republican members voted it down. You signed the petition. You just didn't have the courage to stand up and put the funding into play. And you've been screwing around with this program ever since. You've tried to use IDEA, funding for IDEA, to batter some other portion of the education community. Little incremental were offered year after year, but it always came out of the hide of the less fortunate. You ought to stop it. You ought to stop it. Poor children need access to a high-quality education, and students with disabilities need an access to high-quality education. And the kind of barbaric attitude that is being carried out here in terms of playing these two populations off against one another is simply outrageous. It's unfair to the students with disabilities because it's being done in their name. And we know how desperate they and their families are for education and for the resources to carry out that education. And in their name, we're stripping the resources from some of the poorest children, and also some of the poorest children with disabilities. We're stripping the resources for them. That doesn't sound like a win-win. That doesn't sound like a plus for students with disabilities. I've been at this a long time. I had the honor of writing this legislation with my colleagues back in 1975-76. And it's an honor, and I've defended it my whole life. And it's changed people's lives. And the nicest thing that's ever been said to me in public life is when a parent says, but for that law, my child would have never had an education. But for that law. But I don't think they would have thought that we're now trading their child's education for somebody and to deny another student an education. That's not the game that they wanted to play.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair will remind members that they should address their remarks to the chair.
Mr. Chairman,
what purpose is the gentleman from New Hampshire?
I move to strike the last
gentleman
word.
from New Hampshire is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman for recognizing me, and I have great respect for my colleague from California and all the hard work that he's done now for generations practically on this issue. I would point out that from the late 70s through all of the 80s, special education was funded at 1, 2, 3, 4%. And it wasn't until 1995, 1996, 1997, actually 96, 97, 98, 99, into the 2000s that funding for special education began to increase significantly under the Republican-controlled Congress. President Clinton's own education secretary said on a number of different occasions that full funding of special education had to take a second place to the new programs that the administration was offering at the time, which was school construction, school improvement, and these other programs that my friend, the maker of the amendment, is proposing to reduce in order to fund special education. I have felt for many years that IDEA funding should be the top priority for education funding in the Congress, and I'm pleased that we have this amendment that will restore funding to the same level that it was in fiscal year 2010, and I would certainly like to have it higher than that, but under the circumstances, I believe that this is a good and justifiable improvement. And it's especially important, and it's different from SIP and teacher quality grants, because we make the rules when it comes to special education here at the federal level, and the school districts put out their individual service plans for students, which they have to pay for. So without this amendment and with a cut in funding for special education, it is a direct dollar-for-dollar cost shift to every school district in America. So this is an amendment that is good. It should be bipartisan, and we should all support its passage so that we can get special education funding back to FY10 levels, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Washington. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. The pending chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentlelady from Connecticut.
I ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is ordered pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Washington will be postponed. Purpose, the gentleman from New York rise.
Mr. Chair, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer the motion to speak out against the egregious cuts that are being addressed here to public education contained in this irresponsible Republican spending bill. This spending bill cuts over $1.25 billion in education funding that goes directly to states and school districts to support educating disadvantaged students and special education students. Now is not the time to choke off funding to school districts when stimulus money is eroding and when states are cutting their own budgets. I fear we are leaving schools and our nation's most vulnerable students behind. These sections of the irresponsible Republican spending plan represent a nearly 5% cut in aid to school districts. For Title I funding that supports school budgets and teacher jobs in low-income school districts, this means a $693.5 million cut. For Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA Act, special education funding that supports school districts educating children with special needs and disabilities, this means a $557.7 million cut. Title I funding has helped school districts with high poverty levels meet state education standards and ensure equal access to quality education for all of their students. More than 50,000 public schools around this nation depend on these federal dollars to maintain their educational services. This cut to Title I funding alone would affect 2,400 schools that serve nearly 1 million disadvantaged students. These schools would lose funding for teachers, for tutors, and for after-school programs. It would mean that nearly 10,000 teachers and aides could lose their jobs, children could see larger class sizes, and yes, access to quality education would again be threatened. Not only does this bill cut funding for education for low-income children, but it institutes painful cuts to special education programs funded with the IDEA dollars. For 35 years, IDEA has supported special education, guaranteeing students with disabilities the right to a free, appropriate public education. Millions of students with disabilities have been able to go to public schools because of the IDEA funding school districts receive, allowing them to provide an individualized education for children with those special needs. This bill cuts over $500 million out of special education funding to school districts. Cuts of this proportion could force states and school districts to lay off almost 7,000 special education teachers and aides and other staff serving children with disabilities. Just last week, I met with members of the New York State School Boards Association who advocated for full funding for Title I and especially for IDEA. They stressed the fact that special education funding has never been fully funded to the amount that was originally promised to our schools. These cuts are giant steps backwards after several years of quality investments in Title I and IDEA funding. Furthermore, these cuts would come at a time when states across this country are also slashing education funding. These cuts come at a time when supplemental stimulus aid is drying up. Cuts mean that school districts and local communities will have to make up the difference, potentially with teacher layoffs, larger class sizes, reduced programs, and higher property taxes. This is not responsible policy making, especially while our economy is still in recovery. The majority in this House is lauding the fact that this bill represents the largest spending cut in the history of our country. If they want to cut funding to satisfy their base, fine. But I will not stand for cutting education funding. I will not support budget cuts balanced on the backs of our nation's students, our youngest citizens, and indeed our future. Mr. Chair, I urge defeat of this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support of the amendment to add funding back to Title X from my colleagues Congresswoman Lowy and Congresswoman DeLauro, who have always been fierce advocates for women. In 1970, the Title X Family Planning Program has been a key component of our nation's health care infrastructure and an essential element in the winning strategy to reduce unintended pregnancies. Efforts to cut the Title X program would take away funding from essential women's health care providers like Planned Parenthood. Today, Title X serves over 5 million low-income individuals every year. In every state, women and men rely on Title X for basic primary and preventative health care, including annual exams, life-saving cancer screenings, contraception and testing and treatment for sexually transmitted diseases. In fact, in 2009 alone, Title X providers performed 2.2 million Pap tests, 2.3 million breast exams, and over 6 million tests for sexually transmitted diseases, including nearly 1 million HIV tests. And preventative care isn't limited to cancer screenings and education on how to avoid STDs. If Republicans truly wanted to reduce abortions in this country, they would vote for this amendment. Indeed, Title X actually reduces the number of abortions. Title X services help to prevent nearly 1 million unintended pregnancies each year, almost half of which would otherwise end in abortion. So we can say for certain that Title X funds play a vital role in helping to reduce the number of abortions in our nation, working towards the goal of making abortion safe, legal, and rare. But it goes further. The Title X program, through providers like Planned Parenthood, provide vital family planning services which help improve the life of the mother and the child. It has been proven time and again that family planning keeps women and children healthy. Studies have shown that when women have better access to family planning, it leads to healthier outcomes for both mother and child. When women plan their pregnancies, they are more likely to seek prenatal care, improving their own health and the health of their children. In fact, access to family planning is directly linked to declines in maternal and infant mortality rates. Eliminating the National Family Planning Program will result in millions of women across the country losing access to basic primary and preventative health care and to the providers that offer these services. Without Title X, more women will experience unintended pregnancies and face potentially life-threatening cancer and other diseases that could have been prevented. In recent weeks, Republicans in this Congress have produced some of the most anti-choice, anti-woman, anti-family bills that we've ever seen, trying to redefine rape, raising taxes on women who have private insurance with comprehensive health care coverage, telling women who need our help the most that they are on their own. But that just didn't go far enough for them. Republican proposals to cut Title X funding and completely shut down Planned Parenthood, where millions of women receive their only health care, is one of the most spiteful, egregious moves we've ever seen. It is truly mind-boggling to me that the same members who purport to be anti-choice can turn around and say in the same breath that they want to strike all federal family planning funding. So now they don't just want to make abortions illegal. They also want to throw a huge obstacle in the path of those who want to prevent themselves from ending up in a situation where they might need one. This helps no one. It doesn't help women, it doesn't help families, and it certainly doesn't help reduce our deficit. That's because Title X actually saves taxpayer dollars. Since many of the patients served by Title X are on Medicaid, preventative care like cancer screenings and contraceptive counseling actually means fewer costs to the taxpayers in the long run. Indeed, for every public dollar invested in family planning, $3.74 is saved in Medicaid-related costs. That's savings to both federal and state governments. Mr. Chairman, I'm proud to support this amendment from my good friends that would reinstate Title X funding in the continuing resolution. The decision by Republicans to defund Title X was not only reckless, but thoroughly anti-woman, anti-child, and anti-taxpayer. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and help to correct a massive injustice against American women and families. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The clerk will read.
Page 297, line 23, Section 1825, the level for Department of Education school improvement programs, $3,066,967,000.
For what purpose, gentleman from Alaska?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Record.
Amendment number 532, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Young of Alaska.
Gentleman from Alaska is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, This amendment will strike the language in H.R. 1 that prohibits the Department of Education from funding the Alaska Native Education Equity Act and the Native Hawaiian Education Program. The amendment will not add money to the Department of Education budget, but will allow the Department to fund those programs and as they see a need. And I yield at this time to the good lady from Hawaii for a very short statement. Are you ready? I yield to the lady.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I ask unanimous consent to extend and expand my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
I rise in strong support of this amendment introduced by my colleague, Congressman Don Young, to support Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian education. And this amendment makes these worthwhile programs eligible for these education funds, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I yield the remaining and urge my colleagues to vote yes on the amendment.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Connecticut rise?
Mr. Chairman, I seek time in opposition.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
I move to strike the last word. Mr. Chairman, as I understand the current definition of an earmark as defined by this body, the two programs that the gentleman is seeking to restore are both earmarks. Alaska Native Education and Native Hawaiian education programs are worthy programs. There's no doubt in my mind. And I believe the overall purpose of both is to ensure that the unique educational needs of Alaska and Hawaiian natives are met. And clearly, we all want the same for our constituents. But I think we have to be clear about what these programs are. They are earmarks, with a price tag that approaches $70 million. Now, this majority has been very proud of their policy to ban all earmarks. And if I might, I would like to just read from the comments of the chair of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Rogers, in his summary fiscal year 2011 continuing resolution, and I quote, "The continuing resolution includes no earmark funding and eliminates all previous earmark funding from the fiscal year 2010, saving the taxpayers approximately $8.5 billion. In addition, the bill includes language specifically negating any and all earmarks as defined by House rules." That is why, and again, as I say, this majority has been very, very proud of their policy to ban all earmarks. It's really the decision by my Republican colleague from Alaska, therefore for me very hard to understand. And the support that the majority is providing for this amendment is hard to understand. But I think it is clear evidence that the status quo remains when it comes to special favors and when it comes to special interests. I yield back.
Yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from Montana rise?
Strike the last words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I yield my time to Mr. Young from Alaska.
I'm deeply disappointed in the lady from Connecticut. This is a program that's been in existence since 1994. And you voted for it every time. This is not an earmark, it's an existing program. And I've heard you rail all night about restoring monies which are all earmarks. You're dead wrong. The good lady from Hawaii?
To address the chair.
Well, all right. I'll address the chair, but I'll look over there.
I remind members that all remarks should be addressed to the chair.
All earmarks. I'm going to say respectfully, this is an existing program, and the reason it was started is because the Alaskan Natives and the Hawaiian Natives do not receive monies from the BIA. It was started to recognize an inequity of those people that live in both of our states. It's not a new program, and this language as written is at the discretion of the department as they see a need. And like I say, I thought we were going to start a little bit of a bipartisan effort on this side, and I don't see it. when those people will take away from some of the most impoverished people and have not had that opportunity. So I'm urging my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment, and I say those that oppose it, shame on you. I've heard the bleeding hearts all night, and it deeply disturbs me that they would say this is something different when it's an existing program. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Montana, yield back his time.
I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
To strike the requisite number of words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I yield to the distinguished ranking member.
I thank the gentleman, and I just would say to my colleague and friend, I might add, and my friends here, that this is, in fact, in the same category of a program as Teach for America, the National Writing Project, and other projects, just to name a couple, who have been designated by the majority as earmarks. This is the same category of programs. We can't not be talking about a series of programs on the one hand which are categorized as earmarks, and on the other the same, in the same breath, then say that these, because they are of specific interest to me or anyone else, that in fact then they are not. If we are going to be if we are going to be, really the majority is going to be true, if the majority is going to be true to its
not getting in this.
its principle, and it has been a very, very defined principle. It has been one, that's why I quoted specifically the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, who made a special point of letting not only us but the country know that earmarks were not going to be part of this continuing resolution. I did not say that. I have not stood here and made a claim that the problem with spending in this country is about earmarks and they should all be gone. Now, you either have to define the earmarks, stick to your definition and your principle, or don't, and then let's talk about Teach for America, the Writing Project, and the others that have been categorized as earmarks. Let's have a level playing field. Yield back.
I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Alaska. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Recorded vote is requested. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Alaska will be postponed. The clerk will read.
Page 298, line 20. Section 1826, the level for Department of Education, Innovation and Improvement, $885,786,000. Section 1827, the level for Department of Education, Safe Schools and Citizenship Education, $191,341,000. Section 1828, the level for Department of Education, Special Education, $3,414,870,000. Section 1829, the level for the Department of Education, Rehabilitation Services and Disability Research, $3,453,388,000. Section 1830, the level for Department of Education, Career, Technical, and Adult Education, $1,017,338,000. Section 1831, the level for Department of Education, Student Financial Assistance, $18,475,492,000.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? Or California, I call it. Gentlelady from California.
I rise to offer Amendment 490.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 490, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Ms. Chu of California.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Montana.
I reserve a point of order on the gentlelady's amendment.
A point of order is reserved by the gentleman from Montana. The gentlelady from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I rise today to strongly support investing in America's future. I rise to present the Chu-Moore-Jackson-Lee Amendment to restore full funding to the Pell Grant program. With this CR, the Republicans slashed the very funding that ensures every American has the opportunity to go to college. H.R. 1 does something that is shocking, especially in these tough economic times. It deprives our millions of students of the financial support that they need to go to college. At a time when people are losing jobs, when people can't find jobs, when people are scared about whether they have a future, Republicans are cutting Pell Grant financial aid by 15% for students across the board. This is an astounding number. If the Republicans gut this program, there will be 9 million students who will have cuts in their financial aid, endangering their ability to go to college. It is the largest cut in student financial aid in history. This will hit the neediest students hardest. In California, my home state, 1/3 of undergrads, nearly 65,000 students, get this money for college. And most come from families making less than $30,000 a year. But this is about more than just numbers and statistics. This is about real people, real students, whose real futures are at stake. Students like Chris Ham, who attends the University of Cincinnati. Chris's Pell Grant pays for 1/4 of his college tuition. Without this money, Chris doesn't think he will be able to afford school and will be forced to drop out, leaving him few options in this tough economy. Today, we know we are no longer in an arms race. Today, we are in a brains race. Every year, we are falling further and further behind other countries. Fewer Americans are getting a college degree compared to those from other countries. We don't have all the science, math, and technology talent we need to compete. America's ability to remain competitive in a global modern economy hinges on our ability to encourage and grow a highly educated workforce. Gutting Pell Grants in this bill will only compound our future economic challenges and undermine the dream that we have for our young people to join the middle class. Pell Grants aren't just an investment in an individual student, but an investment in the future of our nation. We need a comprehensive approach that makes strategic cuts and investments with an eye towards the future. Instead, the Republicans are taking a meat axe to programs that are crucial to American competitiveness. This strategy is senseless and it is tragic. It is tantamount to telling our young people, you will not have a future. Instead, we must win the future by out-innovating, out-building, and out-educating the world. We must train all Americans from every class and background to succeed in the economy of tomorrow. We must give them the financial aid that they need. So I ask members to support this amendment and restore Pell Grant funding to our students. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Montana.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill. The amendment is not in order under Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5, 112th Congress, which states, it shall not be in order to consider an amendment to a general appropriations bill proposing a net increase in budget authority in the bill unless considered in block with another amendment or amendments proposing an equal or greater decrease in such budget authority pursuant to Clause 2F of Rule 21. The amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill in violation of such section, and I ask for a ruling of the chair.
If the gentleman would yield.
Does any member wish to be heard on the point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will the gentleman yield?
I don't have any.
The gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized for 5.
Mr. Chair, I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized on the point of order.
Thank you. On the point of order. Mr. Chair, I would just like to say that I think that the point of order should not be considered in order because this continuing resolution looks at striking waste, fraud, and fat out of our budget. And I would argue that amendment number 490 is in fact the bone, the nerve, the blood, and the sinew of our economy.
The gentlelady will confine her remarks to the point of order.
Okay. Well, I am, Mr. Chair, making the point that this amendment is in order because it deals with the continuing resolution, which would slash the Pell grant funding by $845. And the purpose of this continuing resolution is to slash funding that is unnecessary in our budget, and I would argue that this amendment should be made in order because the Pell Grant is the cornerstone of our federal student aid program.
Again, remind the gentlelady to confine her remarks to the point of order.
Would you restate the point of order? Will the gentleman restate his point?
The gentleman is recognized to restate his point of order.
The amendment is not in order under Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5, 112th Congress, which states, "It shall not be in order to consider an amendment to a general appropriations bill proposing a net increase in budget authority in the bill unless considered in block with another amendment or amendments proposing an equal or greater decrease in such budget authority pursuant to Clause 2F of Rule 21. The amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill in violation of this section." And again, Mr. Chairman, I ask for a ruling of the chair.
The chair is prepared to rule. The gentleman from Montana makes a point of order that the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from California violates Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5. Section 3J3 establishes a point of order against an amendment proposing a net increase in budget authority in the pending bill. The chair has been persuasively guided by an estimate from the chair of the Committee on the Budget that the amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill. Therefore, the point of order is sustained and the amendment is not in order.
Mr. Chair, the lady from Wisconsin seeks recognition. I would like to move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady will suspend. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas
I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady will suspend. What purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 239, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
The gentleman from Montana.
Gentlewoman's amendment.
The gentleman from Montana reserves a point of order. The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes on her amendment.
I thank the chair very much, and I have a parliamentary inquiry. I respect the gentleman, but there were individuals who wanted to debate on the amendment of Ms. Chu, and I think we're allowed to do that, except that the gentleman rose on his point of order and started speaking to it before we could strike the last word. Will others be allowed to debate before the gentleman pursues his point of order?
The members may offer, of course, pro forma amendments, but the chair, in observing the chamber, recognize the gentleman from Montana. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Further parliamentary inquiry, so that if a member is on their feet, you would be kind enough to recognize them before the gentleman from Montana pursues the point of order, which he has already reserved.
Not while a point of order is pending.
Let me say that I rise to join with the Chu-Moore-Jackson-Lee amendment, and I now introduce the Jackson-Lee amendment, of which I rise, that also addresses the question of the Pell Grant, and would hope that my colleagues would be allowed to debate it. I consider this an emergency, and I'll make this point as the gentleman makes his point of order. Let me just refer to where we are today, because we are needing to be engaged in making jobs and creating jobs. I'm not sure what my colleagues heard in the last election, but what I heard was that we needed jobs. And it's clear, and I hope that we can see this, we've been here 5 weeks plus. and the number of jobs that have been created by Republicans is a zero. So here we are now with a 15% cut on Pell Grants. And what does that mean? It means that schools all around the nation will, in fact, not be able to provide Pell Grants to the individual students that need them. In fact, in my own district, with this 15% cut, this 5,550 going down to 4,705 will drastically impact students in my constituency. For example, the cuts will jeopardize education and the future of 16,570 students who are currently dependent on Pell Grants in order to finance their education. 5,726 currently studying at Texas Southern University and 10,847 at the University of Houston. 16,570 in my district alone. Those from the state of Montana will lose their Pell Grants. Those from the state of Alabama, from the state of Connecticut, from the state of Wisconsin will lose their Pell Grants. But the real insult is that this will stop the education of thousands upon thousands of students in the middle of their education. Again, how many jobs have the Republicans created? Zero. And I always want to bring this chart, which is very hard to see. But we can see how many jobs we lost in the last administration. We're on the rise of creating jobs. In fact, the CBO said that our future is great. It will not be great with a misguided plan to eliminate $600 million. $600 million from the Pell Grant program. It is absolutely absurd. Let me share with you thoughts from the New York Times, for example. This CR is ideologically driven. We started with a $74 billion cut, but because the Republicans decided that it is preferable to abide by polls, they decided to move to a draconian and ludicrous $100 billion. That means that $600 million was cut from Pell Grants. In addition to an amendment that I did not offer, the NIH, we see that those grants that were competitive for fellowships and research have also been drastically cut in Texas Southern University and the University of Houston, and many state institutions in Texas are impacted by the cuts of the NIH grants. But this is the greatest sin. And in a meeting that I had with my community colleges, my school districts, they were in complete panic about losing Pell Grants that then impacts on the wonderful upsurge of jobs from what we have lost in the last administration. I simply ask my colleagues why we're going down a pathway that would take away the growth that we have provided. And so I would ask, as we look to the future, that this be restored. My amendment, as Ms. Chu's amendment, the one that I joined and the one that I intended to speak on, was in fact to restore these dollars. A new Wall Street Journal survey of economists shows they expect the economy to expand at the fastest pace since 2003. Not with these draconian cuts. Why wouldn't they do as the President's budget has done, is to get rid of the 2% tax cuts for the billionaires? We might be able to provide $600 million for students. But no, we want to, I guess, stand with ideological viewpoints and individuals who say, I was sent here to budget cut. You were sent here to govern. You were sent here to protect the American people. Students who will create the workforce of the 21st century, you're now telling them they can't get an education. And let me say this. The Constitution reminds us of what a wonderful country we live in, a country that believes we all are created equal. We don't have the same economic opportunity, meaning the same wealth, but we do have ability to access education through wonderful programs like the Pell Grant program. Now you're telling poor and low-income students the door is closed, the lights are out, you're not equal and don't deserve an education. I would say that this is an abomination. Support the amendments that would provide for $600 million restored to the Pell Grant. I ask my colleagues to vote for the amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Montana.
The amendment